Hello, everybody. How we doing? Everybody good?
Welcome back.
Excellent. Thank you. Glad to be here. Glad to be back.
Rece, what are your thoughts on State College overall as a college town, and what are your favorite things to do here outside of Beaver Stadium, watching football?
Oh, I think you know the answer to that question. I am a man of great appetite, and I particularly enjoy sweets. So I will be making my way to the Creamery for sure. I love coming here. This is one of the great college towns, great place that really loves and cares about football with a rich tradition, tremendous fan base. We've been here for the last couple of whiteouts, and it's one of the great spectacles in college football. You combine that, some great ice cream. I mean, what's not to like, right?
Have you tried the whiteout flavor of ice cream? Or?
I have not. You know what? They tried to sell me on that last time. What's in the whiteout flavor?
I believe it's like a vanilla infused with a little bit of popcorn flavoring.
Yeah, see, you know what? Actually, I take that back. I did try it. They brought it to the set last year, as I recall.
Yeah.
Last year, the year before. I tried it. It's very good. There are some other flavors I might prefer, but it was good. It was certainly good. I just like the plain vanilla there too. It's just so fresh and delicious, and that's the ringing endorsement for the Creamery, I guess. You know who else has a good creamery? Washington State. They make their own ice cream there too. Very good. And Michigan State, also very strong. Okay, enough ice creams. You want to talk football?
Hey, Rece, there's 6 games. How would you evaluate Penn State quarterback Sean Clifford thus far? And what are some areas you think he needs to improve on to maybe take his game to the next level?
Well, he's growing and improving every week. I think you see the confidence growing all the time. I think one of the things that has really been good about him is he's not the most natural runner in the world. He's not like Trace McSorley, yet there have been key moments in a couple of their tighter games where he's been able to use his feet and pick up the first down, which is something that in this offense is important. I think the best thing he's done has been the leadership, and when Tommy Stevens chose to leave, the famous story that all of you know, that he promised there would be no drop-off, and I think that he has performed very well, and as time goes along, I think he's going to continue to evolve from being, the phrase that I really dislike, the game manager, into a playmaker, because, first of all, let me just offer this. Every quarterback, if he doesn't manage the game, he stinks. So every quarterback is first a game manager. So that's not any kind of slight at him. I think he's done a really nice job of that. And now, as you see him go along, he's continuing to find a way to make plays.
Where do you think Penn State belongs in the national conversation right now, and what do they maybe have left to prove to you?
They've got to win some big games. I mean, I have Ohio State ranked number 1. And so I think they are the standard in the Big Ten. And at the moment, look, all those teams at the top are, it would be easier to rank them in a row instead of a column. But I think they need to win a game against a team of that caliber, and they'll have a chance, against Ohio State later. But the first thing to do is to take care of business against a Michigan team that, in my judgment, on one side of the ball is really struggling. So, you can't lose that game. They've got a really good defense. They've got weapons on offense, so they're capable. But, Penn State's at home, and if they want to be, in the discussion, or in the, maybe a better phrase, I've been trying to eliminate that from the vernacular too, but in consideration and in contention for a spot in the college football playoff, then you've got to take care of business against teams like Michigan, and then you got to go beat Ohio State.
Rece, what are your thoughts on Penn State's defense and where they stand in the national picture?
Yeah, it's one of the best defenses in the country. I mean, I think Wisconsin has sort of eclipsed everybody, because in this day and age of ball, nobody shuts out 4 teams in 6 games, and Wisconsin has. Yet you start stacking up the yards per play stats, the yards per rush. You look at Gross Matos and Tony at the end, on either end, and you think, well, I'm not sure that any defense is really better than theirs. They certainly have big-time playmakers, and they've been dominant. So, it'll certainly be a challenge, not against Michigan's productivity, because they haven't been very productive on offense, but they certainly have skill. And so, they'll be challenged, I think, in that respect, by some good athletes on Michigan's side. They just haven't really put it together very well on offense up to this point.
What direction do you think these 2 teams are kind of trending right now overall programs-wise?
I think Penn State's in a very positive direction, and I would be disingenuous if I didn't tell you I feel like Michigan is kind of plateaued at the moment. Now, that could change. You guys understand this, and I know some Michigan people have brought this up. When Josh Gaddis was here with Joe Moorhead, people were complaining about the offense. It wasn't going, and then all of a sudden, one game, what was the Minnesota game, come back in a Minnesota game, and it clicked. And all of a sudden, now they're good on offense. Michigan fans are hoping that happens. Until it does, it feels like Michigan is just good, not great. I think I said on the show a couple of weeks ago, Michigan, you know, everybody just thinking Michigan's terrible. They're not terrible. They've been good. But they've been good like in recent years, like NC State's been good, or like Mississippi State's been good. You know, that's not Michigan level of good. So I think that right now, until they get their offense figured out, they're sort of flat. But that could change. Penn State fans are well aware of how quickly that changed in the perception of their offense. Penn State, on the other hand, I think is on an upward trajectory. I think that's pretty clear. I mean, this is tough to replace the last couple of years, guys like Saquon and Trace McSorley, and they've done so pretty well. And they're starting to find new stars, and you know, guys like Hamler and Kane's been really good the last couple of games. You know, they've got big-time players on defense. So I feel like the Penn State is, and they beat a ranked team on the road. You know, all these little things that you keep clicking off and building and building and building and hoping that you can avoid getting nicked until you get to that big showdown with Ohio State, and then you really get a measurement of where you are.
Rece, what's your thoughts on the widow tradition as a whole?
It's one of the best spectacles in college football. I mean, you know, everybody does some color out, you know, all across the country, and for whatever reason, it's different here. I don't know if it's the lighting in the stadium, if it's the fact that you have very, very few who don't cooperate and participate, but it is cool. You know, to walk in the stadium and see everybody in white, and you know, whether they're playing Zombie Nation or whatever song they play. They have a great playlist here, by the way, to go with the whiteout. And I think it's one of the coolest experiences. It's what separates college football from other sports. I was on the Levitard show the other day with Stu Gatz and Diana Rossini, and she hadn't really ever been to a big college football game. And I told her, you know, if you get a chance to go to something where it's big, and I use this as an example, I said, if you get a chance to go to the Penn State whiteout game, that's big time. That's something that'll just sort of run chills up your spine, no matter whether you have an allegiance to a school or team or not. Just the whole spectacle of it, I think, really captures the essence of what makes college football such an emotional and connected experience between what's going on in the field and what's happening with the fans in the stands and the fan base as a whole.
Hey, Rich, you had a passionate response to the letter that was sent to Jonathan several things. It sounded like you were really impressed with James's response to that.
I was.
Do you think that's an indication of how much players want to play for him? And do you want to expand at all about your reaction to James's response?
Well, you know, I think the first thing that I noticed whenever someone is put in a position as Jonathan was, and as James Franklin was, how can you respond with grace and class? And I think that both of those guys epitomized that, because, I mean, that letter was the letter. I'm not casting aspersions at the man who wrote it, but it was an ignorant thing to write. I'm not saying that he is, but his choice in this case was ignorant and hurtful and dumb and beyond embarrassing for him, his family, and you know, and really, if he wanted to connect himself with Penn State, I'm sure they were embarrassed to be connected to that. I think any player wants to go and play for a coach who has their back, no matter what. Now, in my judgment, it's very difficult to do so with grace and class, but that was an easy decision to have the players back, and something like that's, you know, there's no choice there. This is like a I've used the word, I'll use it again. This is like an ignorant thing to write to another person. And the guy did that. It's easy to defend the person, especially when it's a team captain and someone who is as respected as Sutherland is. It's easy. But to do it in the manner in which both of them did, and to show and to counter it, to be strong in their counter, yet still take the high road, and in Jonathan's case, show his forgiveness and quote scripture. I could not have been more impressed. It was awesome.
Transitioning to something a little lighter every year since college GameDay started coming around. In 2017, first year, Luke Corso does that famous opening with Surfing the Crowd. David Pollock comes in next year. You going to take a shot at that?
Well, and do the dance? You mean me?
Yeah. Surf
No.
the crowd.
No. I'm not going to surf. Oh, that's right. Pollock did surf the crowd last year. I'd forgotten about that. No. I don't think so. I mean, can you imagine what would happen to those guys if they didn't have me there to keep them in line? That thing would get sideways fast. No, I'm just kidding.
Last one. One of the most fascinating things about the show is when you guys, come down and make these decks.
Yeah.
How much of an influence does weather
I mean, I would say not a huge impact always, unless you have a team that, you know, totally relies on the passing game and it's going to come a monsoon. You know, I think of a North Carolina State Notre Dame game from a few years ago where that, you know, we were having trouble executing snaps because the water was standing, torrential and wind and everything like that. You might be influenced to pick a more physical, ground-based team in that situation. But I think a couple of things about that. One, it's not like the old days. They changed the football so often now that you can still pretty much throw no matter what the weather is. And for the most part, whether you have a natural surface or field turf or whatever it is, the field's drained so well now that it has to be like biblical proportion rain to have standing water on the playing field now. It happens. I did a game several years ago at, I've got a good friend who's on the board of trustees at Bowling Green, and he teased me all the time. He said, you know, you cost us a bunch of money because you guys made so much fun of our field. Hey, they played Miami of Ohio, Bowling Green, Miami of Ohio at Deutsch Perry Stadium. And they came out, and there was so much rain, so much water, they were like playing between puddles. Miami came out to attempt a game-winning field goal, and I'll never, ever forget this, because the kicker was coming out, and this is going to look funny, so everybody zoom out just a little bit. It's going to look funny, but the kicker comes out, and he wasn't doing anything other than trying to keep his kicking shoe semi-dry. You know, as he gets out there. So he comes out and he's going like this, trying to dance around puddles before he gets up, and then he shanked it anyway. So, you know, probably not as much of an impact anymore, but there can be field conditions that might pass. Now I've got to ask you a question. Why did you ask me that question? Are you a weather professor here?
No, with AccuWeather, and we're
okay.
doing
Okay.
sports stories related to weather. So
Okay.
What was the worst condition that you had to actually broadcast from?
That was, well, let's see, there were two. For a game, that was it. Lou Holtzmark me, and I broadcast that game. It was a midweek game in the MAC. That was, I mean, that rain was unbelievable. There were two more. We were also at Miami, Ohio, when that's when I knew Ben Roethlisberger had an uncommon arm, because there were winds not unlike the ones we had here yesterday, but they were solid, like 50-mile-an-hour winds the whole game. They were playing Marshall. Marshall had a quarterback named Graham Gochner, who was a decent quarterback. But when Gochner had the wind at his back, and it was going directly, in one direction or the other, he would throw the ball with the wind at his back, and the ball would just sail and take off. He couldn't be accurate. And literally the other way, it would knock his passes down. Ben, on the other hand, it was like it was any other day. He was just zipping it right through the wind. It didn't matter almost. You know, that's when here's how the winds were so big that game that we thought we were going to have to delay the game because they had temporary lighting at Miami, Ohio, and OSHA was saying if these winds keep up, those are coming down, and we're going to have to suspend the game. And Roethlisberger's sitting out there going, yep, 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 and the other guy couldn't throw it at all. For the show, the most fun one, weather conditions, we were at Western Michigan when PJ Fleck was there in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Big snowstorm. We throw to Gene Wojciechowski on the demo field, and Gene wears glasses, and the snow was blowing sideways, and the snow caked on his glasses while he was trying to do his leading. He looked like Frosty the Snowman, so that was pretty good.
Rece, James Franklin, obviously this team didn't have too many expectations going into this season.
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
But they're 6-0, and they just took down a pretty good Iowa team. So what are your thoughts on the job Franklin has done, through the first half of the season?
I think he is a coach who doesn't get the credit that he deserves. A lot of times, I think a couple of things happen. This guy has a little longevity and has some success, and is able to replace stars and still have more success. You start to appreciate him. The other thing that happens is you look back at a previous job, and you look and you go, whoa, wait a minute, that dude won at Vanderbilt. And it's like, and now he's elevated this back to the level that Penn State fans are accustomed to. So I think he's one of the top coaches in the country, and he's doing a phenomenal job.
Last one.
Rece, what makes the chemistry on set so well between you guys?
We all fake a lot because we all really hate each other. No, first of all, we're all friends. I think that always helps. I think there's a great respect among all of us, not only for the craft and the show, but for each other personally. But I think the thing that separates it is that we all love football. I mean, and I know that sounds cliched, but Herb Street, and particularly, not that we love more than anybody else, but Herb Street, Felique and I will sometimes be texting about the most obscure games going on our iPad or computer or whatever. And a lot of times it's tied to that silly Superdog thing we do. But a lot of times I can distinctly remember before, a couple years ago, we didn't do a week 0 game. So we're all at home and we're watching, let's say UMass played somebody, and I distinctly, Colorado State and Oregon State were playing. And we were like blowing up each other's phones because we're all watching the games. You know, we have probably a semi, at times, unhealthy passion for it, but I hope that shows through on the set, and that's, you know, that extends to everybody on the set. We care about not only the show, but we care about each other, and we care about the good of the game, and I hope that shows through on Saturday mornings.